Hello, folks. Well, we are a good part into the year of 2022 as I record this, and probably as you see this for the first time. Well, you're seeing this after our last trip of 2021 finished. After every long-term trip that I go on, that I share with you all, I also like to share and present a bit of an epilogue video detailing the stuff that you don't get to see on the active travel videos, plus a little bit of my own personal reflections. I am still young. I have a lot to learn, experience, and understand about the world, and through my travels, I get a little bit of a perspective. In every trip, I try to learn a good lesson that I can carry with me for the rest of my life. Now, where we are for this video, well, I can't tell you everything. I like to give a little bit of a hint. I record these epilogue videos on the trip after the trip I detail on the video and explain stuff about. So this is the first trip of 2022, which I will not really reveal. You'll see it in due time. It's an exciting trip. It's actually longer than this last Appalachian trip, believe it or not. But here's a little bit of a hint. Nice beachy area, rather swampy terrain. But anyway, let's get right into it. A lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of important details to share, and a lot of personal reflections that I feel is necessary to give you all a bit of a picture on not just the travel stuff, but also a little bit more of a personal touch. But yes, this is Epilogue 6. This will detail all that happened off camera of trip number 6, the Appalachian Adventure. We spent a good month. I think basically most of September into very early October. We were out on the road for many weeks. This was our longest trip thus far. We traveled to a brand new region, Appalachia, and we covered some new states along the way. Now I urge you all, if you have not seen any, or most for that matter, of the Appalachian Adventure, if you don't really know what the gist of the trip was all about, I implore you, watch some of the videos. Get a feel for the region we were in, because I'm gonna be covering a lot of spoilers. But if you don't, or you didn't get to and you just want to watch this epilogue, fair enough. I will do a very, very brief recap, as I always do, of this latest trip. So, we started out in Pennsylvania, the Allegheny Mountains. Started in Columbia, Pennsylvania, went west to the Flight 93 Memorial. We then went south into Maryland, and not Eastern Maryland or Central Maryland, the Appalachian Maryland, Western Maryland, a town called Cumberland. Then we went into West Virginia, Fairmont, tried a pepperoni roll. Amazing time, amazing treat that pepperoni roll was. Let me just say that. We went down to Charleston, the capital of West Virginia. Going south, we headed into New River Gorge, the newest national park in America. So that was a fun treat as well. We went into the highlands of Virginia, not West Virginia, but Virginia. We saw a few small little towns like Abingdon, Bristol. Not before we went into the very secluded part of these Appalachian Mountains, and we saw the channels of Virginia. Something like out of the West, you know, with those rocky, terraformed caverns. Very interesting. We headed into Tennessee, and of course I mentioned Bristol. Bristol was divided between Virginia, Tennessee. Very interesting little city. Into Tennessee, we saw Kingsport, the model city, and we took a detour into North Carolina. We got to see Asheville, but we also got to spend a couple days in the Great Smoky Mountains, another national park of Appalachia. We went back into Tennessee, saw, I guess what you would consider the cultural hub of Eastern Tennessee, Knoxville. We next entered the Bluegrass State, Kentucky, and entered with quite a debut. We went to the first KFC in Corbin, Kentucky. We took a little bit of a sidetrack detour, Cumberland Falls, Niagara of the South. We headed north to Lexington, Kentucky, that horse capital of America. And then Frankfort, the state capital of Kentucky. Despite it being such a small town for a capital city, Frankfort offered quite a lot. We then saw the Ark in Williamstown, Kentucky. Great fun interactive experience going through the giant wooden constructed boat. We headed into Ohio, Hocking Hills State Park. A great area just to dwell and look at the caverns. We went to Ohio's oldest city, Marietta, in the Appalachian part of Ohio. It's very interesting. Ohio has a great amount of its land within the greater Appalachian area. And we finally ended off our month-long journey at Kinsua Bridge State Park back in Pennsylvania, although a different region. Northwest, right by Erie, another place we visited in the past, but in the Allegheny National Forest, Kinsua Bridge, that broken down bridge where I gave my heartwarming thanks to you all for your love and support of this channel over a year long. Once again, I will tell you, now that you've heard that whole tale of our grand Appalachian adventure, you should check those videos out. One, because you'll have as much of a fun time as I did back in September watching them, but also because this video with all the details, you know, you might be spoiled a little bit, and I would rather you all understand what the whole idea of this trip was all about in as much detail as possible. It's hard for me to conceptualize the idea that that trip was 7-8 months ago. It feels so recent, but yeah, it was that long ago, and I've had months to think about the meaning behind that adventure. So what was the grand lesson I learned in the Appalachian Adventure? Well, I can confidently tell you that this lesson today is there is no one way to live your life. You can really hear the waves crashing. What a nice little place we're at. Salt water. How lovely. Anyway, the waves might be a little too loud for our little monologue here. I'm gonna step a little to the side. But anyway, yes, there is no one way to live life. I was not the same person over a year ago as I am right now. A lot has changed in just, a year and a half. But I've learned along this trip both my strengths and my insecurities. One insecurity of mine has always been I don't want to live without a purpose. I want to know the meaning of my life, and in previous epilogues you could probably get the gist of that. I always wanted to have a clear idea of what was meant for my life, what was my purpose, how could I contribute to the world in an effective manner. Out of high school, there were many options I could have taken with my life. I could have continued with my college path. I could have done something else, do some trade school stuff, gotten a job there. Maybe I could have joined the military. Maybe I could have just done some freelance stuff. There were many, many options. The one thing I didn't want to do though was make the mistake of choosing the wrong path that would set me on a wrong course of direction in life. I didn't want to work so hard for years and years only to find myself so disappointed with how my life has become, or a general sense of dissatisfaction with the way I'm treating my life. One thing's for sure though, I wanted to seek a sense of happiness. I wanted my life to be without regret. I was a college student for a while, but between a lot of the, stuff going on in the world politically, and then the whole COVID thing, it really fatigued me, and it got me to think, how do I fill my life with purpose? How do I go along the direction in which I want to make my life? Being a bit dissatisfied with the path I was going on at the time when I was really dwelling on this whole idea of what I want to make my life. I thought, for my whole life, I've loved learning about all this stuff. Geography, history, languages. So while thinking and dwelling about all of this, I decided to take the initiative, to take a risk, and do something a little bit unconventional with my life, a little bit unorthodox. So I left my college. I don't believe I'll be going back, at least to that one. I decided I'm gonna just work and save as much money as I can to achieve this lifelong dream of traveling to all 50 states. First there was the goal, and then I thought, is there a better way I can do things instead of just, hopping, skipping around, going to all these states? What if I can record myself and experience the things I see, document it all on film, and what happens if other people see this? What happens if I share this? Will this affect anybody else in a positive manner? Will I be able to teach anybody some valuable life lessons, or will I just be able to put a smile on people's faces by doing this type of stuff? And that's what started the coverage project. A little over a year ago, when I first started my first long-term travel, back then it was only a week, through Pennsylvania, just one state. To think that now we've really expanded what it means to have a long-term trip. But anyway, when I first started that, I was very unsure of myself personally, and with all the insecurities I do have, along with the idea that, yeah, I have some strengths, but I also know in the back of my mind, I don't know if I can do this, or I don't know if this is even a good idea. And I think deep down it really stemmed from this idea that, yes, I was risking a lot. I saw that a lot of my friends were continuing their college studies, or other people had jobs that they were very satisfied with, or just people were at positions where they felt a sense of complacency, a level of calm and content that maybe I didn't have at that time. But this trip, this latest trip, has taught me that truly there is no one way to correctly live your life. No matter what society says, no matter what your family says, no matter what friends sort of suggest that you do, there truly is no one perfect way to live your life. So let's get back to the actual trip. What did you all not get to see that maybe I should have prepared my camera for, or just didn't have time to film or edit anything? What did you not see? There were plenty of people I met along the road, on the campground, off the campground, in the cities and the towns, even just on the side of the road, or even at like some gas station or whatever. I met so many people on this trip. Friendly faces, people who shared a bit of wisdom with me, people who were just there for a good time. That really changed for the better what this trip meant to me. So on that first leg of this long trip, we went to Flight 93 National Memorial. That was almost not part of the itinerary, but as I was going to some other place and realized, okay, the conditions aren't great to go to this small little place, I felt like the Flight 93 National Memorial was probably, honestly, a more important and culturally profound place to spend my day. So I'm glad I went there, and I'm even more glad that I met a group of reporters who were based in Washington, D.C. It was the 20th anniversary, and they showed up to probably do some journalism work, and they spoke German. And I love learning new languages, and probably the second language I know the best to English is German. I learned it for a number of years. I'm conversationally, I wouldn't say fluent, but I can have a conversation. And I approached them and I said, Entschuldigung, mir ist aufgefallen, dass ihr Deutsch sprecht. And they were caught off guard but pleasantly surprised, and we had a beautiful conversation just about the meaning of this memorial and what our lives are like. You know, them doing their journalism work, me doing my own sort of journalism work too, in a way. And it was just a beautiful start to the trip. Now, these people were, rather professionals. They were doing their professional research and journalism, but yet they were totally willing to have a conversation with just an ordinary person like me. So that really impacted me and made me feel good. It helped set a great momentum for the rest of the trip, in my view. I went down to New River Gorge, a beautiful place that I recommend all of you visit someday. The first night I was there, I met this one guy who was from the West Coast, I believe. He was traveling solo with his cat, so maybe not completely solo, but you get the idea. There was a similarity, there was a connection. I was traveling solo, he was also. I caught him doing some fishing or whatever he was doing towards the little river. Luckily, the campground was right next to either a tributary or the main New River. I talked to him and we just mutually shared our love for nature and the world and learning about things and going on adventures. So I knew that I was not alone on my own little solo expedition. There are other people who took a break. I think he took a break from what he was doing. He was doing some white-collar work, and he took a break for a long period of time. Just like I was having my little break, there are other people just like that. He was actually my 200th subscriber, believe it or not. So if you are seeing this right now, from the bottom of my heart, you definitely impacted this trip for me with just a simple conversation. It was delightful, so thank you very much. As I reached Eastern Tennessee, there was this kid younger than me by a few years, and I guess I could tell you, he was the first real connection I had after reaching, I guess what you would call the true South. He taught me, I guess, the ways of Southern charm. We did a little bit of cooking at the back of my trailer, and it was nice. It was a very, very pleasant experience. So once again, you impacted me in my trip if you were watching that. And in a way, that kid, he introduced me to Southern hospitality. It was such a flattering experience that someone from the north who comes down, plops his trailer in the middle of some Southern campground would be welcomed. So that also impacted me in a delightful way. After a long day spent in Asheville looking at Biltmore Estate and then touring the downtown vibrant city, I was done for the day. I set my camera down just before returning to my car to go back to one of the campgrounds. I came across two people, I think a couple who were just living as vagabonds. I think they were living in their van had some trouble, and they were just by the street in the busy downtown asking for whatever, whether it was money or food or supplies or whatever to continue this trip. Now, they didn't have any sort of safety net to fall back on. They were living the true vagabond life, which I very much was inspired by and admired. Wanting to live that type of life, it fascinated me to know that there were people that I could meet who were doing just that. These two nomads, as I guess you could call it, really taught me in a real-life experience through talking to them. You don't have to have a big, nice house with a car and luxury amenities and everything that conventional society would dictate that this is what it means to be successful. They were quite happy. They were very friendly, amicable. Just this idea that they were probably happier than the people that you see who are rich and have all these luxuries, because they found the simple things that provided them with the necessary means of happiness. I believe later that night, that very night, went back to that campground near Asheville, and a group of older Southern couples, they came to my trailer, you know, they did the usual thing. Whoa, it looks so nice. Does it have the kitchen in the back? And all that stuff that I don't need to really explain. But what mattered was that they invited me to join them to watch square dancing. Yes, square dancing. That's something I really should have included as some side thing or some short video. Oh man, my first experience watching square dancing, I think it was a practice of some sort, but they had a very professional caller, and it really introduced me to another layer of either Appalachian or Southern culture. It was truly a remarkable experience that I regret not bringing my camera for. Just another example of that hospitality and friendliness. Once you go outside of the well-toured cities of America, true Americana culture is a lot more generous, I would say. So then I get back up north, I enter Kentucky, and at my first campground of Kentucky, I see, wait a minute, familiar faces. I'm states away from anyone I've met, and all of a sudden I see two familiar faces from not just people I've seen in past experiences, but literally this same Appalachian trip. Earlier in the trip, I was in West Virginia near Charleston, and I met a couple. They were a generation or so older than me, and they were just living their own little vacation van life. And we talked, and we had great conversations. They said, well, we're gonna go in the same general direction eventually. It would be interesting if we somehow met up someplace. And that's exactly what happened. I was near Cumberland Falls, and I saw those same two people, so it was amazing that not only did I have a grand experience talking to people on the campgrounds, but I got to revisit them. I think that was a first for me. At that same Kentucky campground, there was a guy who I believe was at an adjacent campsite from mine, right next to me, so that prompted us to get to know each other, to talk, and he was a very well-traveled fellow, very experienced fellow in the world of business. He did a lot of commerce and trade through his life, but he was doing things just in his van. He had a whole setup. I asked and inquired about it, and he was just telling me, well, no, it's the simple things in life that matter. And we really connected on that idea. It's not about luxury. It's not about going to resorts or anything. He chose this simple campground. He had all the money in the world, but he chose this simple place for the happiness it gave him. And then we get to Hocking Hills. Oh, Hocking Hills, what an experience that was. I mean, off Hocking Hills and on the Hocking Hills campground. I think that was more special to me than all the wondrous sights I saw there in the park. Nearby my campsite is another campsite, and there's a fellow a little bit older than me reading a book. He has a dog with him, and it's a very peaceful campsite area. So I approach him and I talk to him. I introduce myself. I ask a bit about what he's doing, and he's on this months-long, plural, months trip. He's from the West Coast. He's going east through all those northern states, and he reaches Ohio at the same day as I think he's there for 1 or 2 nights. I'm only there for the 1 night. We happen to cross paths, and we're generally of similar personality. We click, we have great conversation into the night. I try to help him as much I can with a fire he's trying to build, and it gets late into the night, and we just talk about meaningful things that mean a lot more significantly to both of us. And so we know each other generally decently well for people who just met that same day. And then he asks, wait a minute, what's your name? I don't think I've asked that yet. And I'm like, oh yeah, I think you're right. We haven't asked each other what each other's names are. And I say, my name is Eli. And he's like, what? Your name's Eli? My name's Eli too. And at that moment, I don't know if there was a more coincidental moment on that trip than that. We bonded for so long, not even knowing each other's names. And then it just happens to be that we have the same name. We're on our own adventures, we're doing our own thing, but just what's the chance of that? And I really carry that memory, that shock, that genuine sense of, oh my goodness, what are the odds? It filled me up with joy so much. He also, in addition to all the fun chats we had, was just as much of a traveler as I was. Or at least he's probably more well-traveled, but he was on his own quest, he was on his own adventure, he was doing it all solo. Just another example of, there are people just like you and I who are trying to find our own place in this world. And as I go back to it, there's no one way to live it. There is just no one correct way. For all the degrees you get, for all the money you get, for all the people you get to know, there's no one correct way. If you feel happy doing what you love or doing what you feel won't create any regrets in your life, then you've lived your life correctly. I'm on my way back, and I stopped by New Vrindavan. And that's a familiar place if you've seen some videos on the coverage project. I stop by and I chat with the people, a lot of new people, but some of the people I've seen before on my first trip there. And I'm not really Hare Krishna, I don't belong to that Society Krishna consciousness, but I love engaging with people of different mindsets, and oh my goodness, they were very stimulating. Interesting conversation, it feels like they have it all figured out. Just talking with them really enlightens you, or it makes you feel that way. So that's just another way to live life, a very spiritual, religious lifestyle. So officially that final night of my Appalachian Adventure, Kinswa Bridge, nearby campground in the Alleghenies. I stopped by and chat with a group of rather older couples in their 50s, 60s, I believe. And you know, for the age difference, the generational, cultural differences, me, someone just blossoming into adulthood, may have in contrast, I wouldn't say so. At the very core, I learned that night that we're all human. We just want to have fun. They were quite fun, you know, making fun of each other, making fun of the park rangers, just having a nice time. Very heartening to know that no matter who you are, we all have the same human emotions, and we all just want to feel that sense of pleasure, happiness. Now, with all of the people I met and talked to and had these wonderful, enlightening discussions with, they all had one thing in common. Sure, they may have lived so differently lives. You know, you had the vagabonds, the free spirits. Then you had, you know, more of a spiritual, religious type of people. Or then maybe you could have people who did their 9 to 5 for 40 years and then, you know, in old age, then they're, you know, living their best life. All in common, there's one thing. No matter if they were supposedly going on the wrong direction in life, they were content and happy with the personal direction they took their life. It was their personal journey, and nothing deterred them from doing the things in life they wanted to do or believed in. And that's what made everyone so appealing to talk to. To me, it felt like I was gaining wisdom from all these various sources, from the humanist perspective in that other Eli I met in Hawking Hills, to the Hare Krishnas I met at the end, or the couples a generation older than me who have had that life experience and made life what they wanted it to be like, or just the people around my age who wanted to see what more life was all about than what society wanted for them. Take, for example, this moment right now. I am on a beach. I'm not really much of a beach person. I could care less about it. Cool sights, but I'm not gonna spend all day on the sand. Burnt. I don't tan easily, but other people do. They love the beach. They live for it. And so there might be a difference of perspective between me and all the other people you might see on a beach. But I'm living my best life, they're living their best life. And that's what matters. No one can say you're not living life correctly if you are the happiest you can be. So here's where I would conclude. A year ago, I didn't know if I would be doing this longer than a year. Maybe I would get 30, 40 states within the time frame and be like, okay, I've had my fill of travel. But I don't think that's where life is calling me to go. Just to reach so far and then to say, well, I'm kind of done, I've had my fill. I feel like I am taking a risk by not getting a degree or not trying to pursue a full-time job or anything like that. I'm doing this and I'm not getting paid a cent for it. But money is not everything, and neither is the sense of wanting to have this luxurious status, that I'm officially this proud member of society who has it all. No, I prefer going through life like this, where through the people I meet, which is the best part of travel, believe me, and the experiences I have, those are the things that will teach me and guide me through life. So sure, it's a bit of a risk what I'm doing, but I'm content knowing that I am doing exactly what I want to do, where I am in the exact place I want to be right now in my life. And I'm content with that, and that makes me the most happy. The fact that I am far, far away from where I normally live will show you that I'm continuing these adventures. And I probably won't want to stop after I've reached all 50 states. I'd really want to experience some foreign countries to get that foreign sense of culture. The US is as diverse as it can be for a country, but there's plenty more exploring and discovering to do in this world. If it is enough of a contribution for me to make and produce this content and to spread as much goodwill as I possibly can towards the people of this world, well, then I am content. That may be my purpose. I'm not sure. I could be very well wrong, but for right now, I'm content doing what I'm doing. So, as I usually say, as I always say in every video, more travels are sure to come. More travels are definitely coming along. This trip, oh, new places to see. Quite a fun adventure so far. Do not let anyone dictate what your true life is meant to be. That is my advice. So until trip number 7, looking at this mighty blue body before us, more travels to come. I will see you at the next location.